Welcome into this conversation today. I am always looking at how can we expand our vision so that we're not centered right here and just stuck in our tunnel vision. Just like life can be so focused and so small. And I love taking a step back and thinking about what can we do in our day if we feel motivated and inspired. So I love having these conversations for Fresh Talks Global Vision. My name is Rhonda Liebig. I'm the producer and the host of this show. Let's dig in with Roberto C. Mayer today. And I love the book that he has published. It's been a bit. I think it was 2019, maybe, that you published, Roberto. But I really want to hold the space about your book, The 7 Keys to the Serenity Prayer. And it was published in 2019 in Portuguese. And you're also looking at translating it for the English speaking too. Roberto, you have such a robust background. So many things like what you said. You've been speaking since you were like in your 20s, and you said that wasn't just yesterday. And I was like, really? But I want to get some insight to really get this conversation going about what is. I'll just kind of make it big for right now. What does the Serenity Prayer mean for you, to you, and what you're sharing out there to people with your book and your talks and what you're doing?
Well, in fact, the Serenity Prayer is the base prayer used in mutual support groups all over the world. Yeah. I came into this kind of organizations about 15 years ago due to a challenge in my family. I'm in my second marriage, and my stepdaughter got into addiction. And so it was recommended that my wife and me also participated in support groups to exchange ideas, to know from other people who had gone through the same difficulties. And due to all my previous experience as a long-time entrepreneur, I've been participating in trade associations for decades and traveled in many countries. I started asking questions, which probably very few people had asked before. And due to that, in a very short time period, let's say 2 or 3 years, I was introduced to the founder of this mutual support groups here in Brazil, which is, or was, better say, an American priest, an American Jesuit called Harold Ram, who came down to Brazil in the end of the 60s and lived until just before the pandemic. He passed away at age almost 101 years old.
Wow.
And during, let's say, his last decade of life, I think I was one of his best friends, if not the best one. And we had very long conversations over many, many subjects. And by the way, he also wrote the foreword to my book.
Ooh.
And well, I'm from a Jewish family. My grandparents emigrated from Europe before the Second World War. And he, as a Jesuit, mirrored himself on the Pope. Pope Francis is also a Jesuit. And this order, the Jesuits, are very few around the world. They meet regularly. So they knew each other. And Pope Francis' best friend is a rabbi in Argentina. And they even wrote books together. Father Harold wrote over 60 books over his life. And he mirrored our friendship on Pope Francis' friendship with this rabbi. And all this process led me to develop a lot of content. I think this book is just the first one, using the contents we discussed, we developed. And I think the basic motivation for the book was, in fact, your question. What does it really mean? Because most people who use the Serenity Prayer in mutual support groups just repeat it mechanically without ever thinking what it really means. And that was the starting point of my exploration. The first questions I asked were from an historic point of view. Where did it come from? How did it explode to be used all over the world? And in fact, there's no clear explanation for the historic origin. Many people say they have invented it. There are even some traces of the prayer written even during the Roman age. So,
Wow.
very far away. And in fact, it became very famous after Alcoholic Anonymous adopted it at the end of the 30s, and then it spread over all the world. And
Roberto, let me ask a question, because you've really given a lot of good nuggets. So let's back up just a moment here. And so in your family, you were dealing with a family member with addiction. And then it was said to you, you and your wife, that'd be good for you to also, so you understand and you help the process along and things like that. Before you found that Serenity Prayer and got to experience this growth that was going to happen and the trajectory of where you are, for our audience members, what did you learn about yourself? And was it difficult to notice that you really wanted to make changes for yourself? Like, how did it feel when you finally started discovering, here, there's some things I can adjust? And so can you give me a little bit of the backstory there?
yeah, of course, the story is rather long. The process is over 10 years old. I think it's already at 15 years. She's now in recovery for over 5 years. But the process is in fact very hard when you get into this kind of situation. The first reaction you have once you understand what's happening is you feel like the worst person in the world. The subject is not discussed publicly, although it affects a significant part of humanity. This year in Brazil, medical studies reveal that about 15% of the Brazilian population live together with someone who is addicted to drugs or alcohol. I don't know the exact figure for the US, but it's
Roberto, you said 15%?
15%, yeah.
Oh, wow.
And alcohol is very widespread here in Brazil. And but at the same time, the mutual support groups, if you be in their many denominations and varieties which exist, if you believe their marketing and sum up the figures for all of them, you come to about 2 or 3% optimistically, and that means that most people who get trapped by this situation don't do anything about it. They last
It's
get it.
scary though, Roberto, with any change at all. Like, it's scary to be in it,
Mm-hmm.
and it's scary to make that change, like any change at all. And you're
Uh-huh.
talking about something that has a handle on you that takes you to a whole nother place that, that you feel shameful about. And so many people have this perceived notion that that's a really bad person that's dealing with it. And when they're under the influence, it's like, I didn't know that I acted like that. I like, and there's all this shame and the character of that person. They feel like they really are that bad person. So there's a lot of mending to do with that.
Mm-hmm.
So for
Yes.
you, when you were going through these steps, what were you learning about yourself that you needed to heal?
Well, the first thing I learned is that this problem is a disease. Many people judge addicted persons as morally lower people, and that's not the fact. In fact, it's a disease. You have medical treatment for the process, but at the same time, the environment these people live in obviously has a very important role in their recovery. And in order to admit that and to do all of these changes, you need to go over many steps, let's say, Yeah. Some of them I used as chapter titles in my book. So, for example, the first thing you need is to accept these facts. Yeah. And accepting doesn't mean conforming to what's happening. Conforming is very easy. You just let it go and okay. Yeah.
Mhm.
But accepting is something different. Then you need courage to take action. Yeah. And but
Yeah.
in order to take action, you need to know what action to develop, and that needs wisdom. And these three words, in fact, are part of the prayer, yeah, but most people do not pay attention to that. And that basically, that's what I learned. This is what I developed as the contents of the book, and
Mhm.
I have been now sharing. In fact, the book was published here in Brazil 5 years ago by one of the bigger publishing houses. And some
Mhm.
people ask me why it's taking so long for the English version. Father Harold, Father Harold, in fact, he challenged me. When we had the first manuscript in Portuguese, he told me, I write the foreword, but you'll have difficulties because you have no formal education in this area. But even so, I managed to have the book published by one of the bigger publishing houses here in Brazil, yeah,
Wow.
if not one of the
Congrats.
biggest in the nonfiction area. And when they gave me the contract for the rights for the book, they included the right to translations also for them.
Ooh.
And but they didn't do any translations. So over 2024, I had a small, let's say, legal battle in order to get my rights back for the translations. And that was ended basically by we had a friendly agreement signed in November 24,
Wow.
so
Good.
that I got the rights to the translations back.
Well,
And
congratulations. I have a question for you.
yeah.
Oh, like a statement here. Like what you're doing is what I'm feeling is your reason here, like your to be here on earth is to have people experience what not, I mean, I know the book is called The Prayer, but the experience of the transformation of what potentially could happen if you
Mhm.
go step by step through the book and you learn about your journey and the stuff that sometimes you don't want to face, but the
Mhm.
potential of what could happen if you do take those steps and find, like what you said, wisdom and courage. And those are like great, like big words when it comes to when you feel this small when you're starting off. So I see why you're out there globally trying to, like have this is your baby. So you want to have the rights to be able to get in every language. So that warms my heart because I know that I'm on a humanitarian project to stop the shaming and blaming, how we beat ourselves up in the things that we do. So I love being able to be in the space with you as you're sharing how important this is to you. How do you prepare yourself? Now, I want to go with this question in a way of like helping our audience understand who you are. You have a really big vision of what you're doing. How do you prepare your vessel, your body, your mind? It's almost like you're working like an athlete to be able to do something so big. How do you get yourself in that space to keep yourself moving forward, vitality wise, energetically, and believing in yourself?
Well, in fact, that's one of the other challenges we longly discussed with Father Harold and his experience living over 100 years on this earth, eh, is obviously an inspiration. The first thing is you need to take care of yourself. And this is something when you have big challenges in life, this is very common, very easy to forget about this fact.
Yeah.
And in my case, balancing all parts of my life is also a challenge, because I'm an entrepreneur. I own my own business now for over 30 years. I participate in trade associations here in Brazil. I am currently Brazil's representative in the international federations for these trade associations. So
Yeah.
I thought I have obviously a family life. I have my friends, and I developing all this content and writing and speaking.
Mhm.
This means a very tight schedule, and balancing all of these aspects of life eh, is very, very important.
Yeah.
The vessel you mean the body needs to be. It's basically, that's just to answer your question in short. You need to use each part of your body. You need to use your brain. You need to use your muscles. If you don't use them adequately, they will go away. So
Yeah, they will. And your mind can go away if you're not using it. Your muscles can go away, and the atrophy can happen so easily. I was on thyroid medicine for 20 years, and the transition of getting off of medicine and being off for 10 years, that's a big story in itself. But you know what really is the feeling is how do I step into my everyday? Because there's a reason why I ended up on that medicine. And so when you go through your bouts, like we all have family things and different things that go on. Again, this is for our athletes out there of like they have like this bigger vision. Because I want to get more into your to what you're doing also. But this I think this is so important because you're really talking very big stuff here and what you're seeking to do is do you when something big is going on for you, is there something else you tap into that's even deeper, that's just like maybe not a regular thing going on, but there's like a really deep stress? What do you tap into? Is it prayer? Is it like but what's that another layer that you do that you're like, I'm having a very big day and my body, I'm gonna really go down if I don't do something. What's the extra things that you do for yourself?
well, in fact, during the initial progress in participating in support groups, one change I did in my life was starting to participate actively in sports. As a youngster, I never liked that. Right then,
Oh,
over the next decades, I tried many varieties of physical activity and never got engaged longer than a couple of months in any of them. And it's now, I think, 12 years that I'm playing volleyball regularly.
what?
And
Ooh, my daughter plays volleyball. I love it.
yeah, and after the pandemic, I managed my schedule to intensify the number of hours per week I play. And this has also led to a significant loss weight, which has on a very significant impact also on general health. Uh,
Yeah.
yes, I think uh, when I'm playing, volley is a sport where you need to use not only your muscles, your body, your reactions, but also your brain because you have to pay attention to the ball all of the time
Mm.
and to your colleagues, to the other team. And so it's also a kind of meditation because your brain is totally concentrated on something very different. I always say, I don't need to rest. I just need to change the activity I'm getting tired of.
Yeah, I know. I
And
feel
this
it.
is a secret to
Yeah.
develop a lot of energy. Yeah.
So what do you want our audience to think about when we're looking at where we get stuck and some of the tips or the strategies or something that you can pull from your book that's like really important to get out to people? Like what's the big thing that you're like, this really needs to get out this part?
Right. I think the first thing I learned through all this process is that spirituality is something very different from religion. you
Yeah.
There are many people which put these two concepts on the same plate and talk of one when they mean the other, and the reverse also.
Yeah.
And in fact, spirituality is something which lies behind all religions. Most of them have many traits in common. But on the other hand, that's one of the appendix of the book. Spirituality is also available to people who do not believe in any specific religion. Atheists can
Mhm.
also be spiritual. Doesn't matter if they don't believe on anything, if they believe just in science or if they believe in nature. In any way, spirituality is the background which will foster our behavior. It's the
Mhm.
value we use to develop our behavior. And that's basically separating what's good and what's not. So this is a
Roberto, you are speaking something that is like, I think the world needs to understand that. I know for me, I'll go into just like a little bit of a food situation. Like I used to eat through food. Like we're talking, addiction to drugs and stuff. Well, when I was younger, that's what helped me get through certain situations that I just was so overwhelmed. So I just eat tons of sugar. And I would do it when people weren't around. And so it was like, okay, let me go hide that and do that. And at some point, like just in the spiritual space, like being aware of it doesn't matter where you do it, discover why you're doing it, and then be able to live life, even if you're in the background. What are you doing there to that you could do in front of everybody and everything would be okay? And I really love that about spirituality is I want to be in alignment with myself. If I'm not in alignment, then something is my body's going to go down. My body's going to go down because it's going to be the hating on myself and the stuff that I was doing before that brought me to medicine. And even worse than that, it affects relationships when you're trying to hide stuff. So I've been with my husband for 27 years, and I started in a different space than I am now. And when I talk to him about these things, it's like I just want to be in truth. Like what I'm feeling, I want to be able to say it because I'm doing my work. I'm not jumping and wanting to argue. I'm wanting to not hide and be in truth and open up. That is a really special space that you're holding there is let it all be out in front. Be with nature. Okay, that's spirituality. Listen to science because science is very deep these days. Quantum physics, like all that. So I love what you're saying about that because then we get to create a bigger, bolder person and people around us and what we expect in our relationships. In your book, if you keep that story, which you've been doing this for a very long time, you're part of what we call hashtag speaker locking arms, that we are locking arms in a way of like almost like a spiritual kind of connection. Like whatever you do, I'm going to support you because I want to know more about what you're going to be doing in the future because you're doing big things. So I want to make sure that we stay in touch with making sure maybe I have you back in 6 months. So when I send you, information, maybe we get you on my calendar in 6 months and we just keep that flow going to see, where have you gone at this point? And then you can keep just kind of speaking to what you're doing. I'd really appreciate that. I love your journey that you're on right now.
Thank you. What you are saying about truth, I would also add the word coherency. The big problem most people face as youngsters is that they are not conscious of the process. Probably when you seek to get high, doesn't matter if with sugar or with alcohol or whatever.
Yeah.
You do that without knowing that you are doing it. You do it in an automated way as an automated reaction to
Yeah.
the environment. And this process of developing our consciousness is part of what we learn to get what is called mature.
And so I love that you say environment because it's not just on you. Because again, we're about shaming and blaming, so we just keep beating ourselves down. Oh, how dare you? I feel shameful and stuff. But it's like take a step. You can take a step out and look at your environment. How can we change it? Even like change the house. Like, is there something we can clean up? And like, what are you living in? I mean, something so basic as that. So it's like it's really simple steps that are scary.
Mhm.
I'm so scared, but I'm going to do it anyway. Because I don't because have somebody in my family that I get to spend so much time with. I love him so much, and he's dealing with this kind of stuff. And he's like, I just feel so shameful. Like he'll say that, and I'm like, well, no, let's talk about that, because I will always be here for you, because it's not that. It's, and it's like that conversation forward and making sure that he feels safe to feel safe. That it's okay to feel safe, that you don't have to keep beating yourself up. And if something good happens, and that's sometimes when people are in that, like, it's bad because I feel good and I shouldn't because I'm this. So there's this whole thing that I can see of what you're doing out there. So I appreciate you so much, Roberto, and thank you for spending time with us and expressing your love for your book. And I can't wait for it to be in English. Make sure you send it to us so we know when it's available. And let's get you back on the show in 6 months, and we'll check out what's happening.
Okay. Thank you very much, Rhonda.
You're welcome.
Pleasure
Fresh
to be
Talks
here.
Oh, thank you. Fresh Talks Global Vision. We are here to really support everybody. You and then you get to support other people, and so on, because this is about opening the voice and knowing that if you feel good inside, that's a good thing. If you're shaming and blaming yourself, maybe you were taught that, but that's not okay. And so how are we going to get out there and really lock arms and really share our story in a way that it's serving? So go out there and share your story and love on people and say hello to people. Don't ignore them. It's going to make you feel better. It's going to make somebody just like a special smile. You get to help somebody have a good day, and it'll make you feel good too. I love you, Fresh Talks Global Vision. Have an insightful day. Love you. Namaste.